So what does it mean when we say we're sight reading? So what we're looking at is sheet music, as many of us have commonly seen this, and we've been introduced to music either in elementary school or high school or college, where we may have taken a basic music class where we're introduced to music as it's written. So what does this mean? Well, notation or sheet music is a graphic representation of what we're hearing when we listen to music, much like the written language is a graphic representation of what we're hearing when we speak to each other. So these are the elements of what we see on sheet music. So we have these lines, which is a staff, and we have another staff here. And this staff is a G clef or treble clef, and this staff is a bass clef or an F clef. So most of us know that higher notes are on this clef and lower notes are on this clef, or in many cases the right hand is playing this clef and the left hand is playing this clef, but not always. And we'll get more into that as we advance in this channel. So, what else do we have here? We have these numbers, 4/4. That means that in this measure, and this measure begins here and ends here, we have 4 beats, and each beat is a quarter note. So we know that in a lot of music, 4/4 time is very common. Rock and roll, blues, classical music, jazz, but there are other meters other than 4/4. But for right now, we'll just stick with 4/4. So we have no notes here. These are just blank measures. But are they really blank? We have this symbol here, which is a full rest, full 4-beat rest. So it means there's no notes and there's no music being played in any of these measures. So we would have 4 measures of no notes being played. So we'll get more into what rests are shortly. So let's start getting into the note names or the pitches of the notes. So the notes that are on the lines are E, G, B, D, F. Now, a lot of times you're taught the acronym, every good boy does fine. To memorize what each note is on the staff. So you'll do every good boy does fine. But I don't believe that's a good method of memorizing the notes. I think you should just know the notes instantaneously, because what will happen is you'll start relying on the acronym. Every time you see a note on this line, you'll say every good boy, and you'll go, okay, that's a B note. And it'll only slow you down. And get more into instantly identifying notes. I have a tutorial using Hanon exercises to help you learn the notes better, fit faster, and instantly. So those are the notes on the lines. So the notes that are not on the line are F, A, C, and E. So these are the note identifiers. When you see that note, you know it's an E note. And it's G, B, D, F, and so on. And this spells face, which is another way many of us have been taught to memorize the lines, the notes that are not on the lines, that are in the spaces. So this is the notes on the treble clef. Of course, there are notes that are below these lines and notes that are above these lines because the piano has many more notes, and those are ledger lines, and we'll get into that a little later. So that's the notes on the treble clef. And the notes on the bass clef are G. Hold on, I'm one octave too low for this, so let me undo. So we have G, B, D. Hold on, let me redo this. We have G, B, D, F, and A. Those are the notes that are on the lines in the bass clef. Now, I don't have an acronym for that. You can make something up, but like I said, I do not recommend having an acronym. I think it's best to just identify the notes when you see them. You could say, make something up. I'm not good at that, and I have not done that for the bass clef. I just memorized what the notes are. And the notes that are not on the lines are A, C, E, and G. So those are the notes and the note names when you see them on the staff. So these are all eighth notes, and we see there are some rests appeared in between the notes. But this is just to identify the notes. Now, I have the name of the note inside the note, and I'm only doing that for this tutorial so you can identify the note. But going forward, there will be no note name or note letter inside the note. That will not appear anymore. Let's look at note durations. We'll start with the largest note duration. So a whole note, this will be an A, is an A note held for all 4 beats of this measure. And if you were to put an A note in the bass clef, you would put it down here. It would be the same. It would be an A note held for all 4 beats of this measure. Now the next largest note is a half note, and that would be held for 2 beats. So you could fit 2 half notes in one measure. Same down here. That's two A notes in the bass clef. And now you have quarter notes. You could fit 4, hence quarter notes. And the same goes down here. the bass clef. And you have eighth notes. You can fit 8 eighth notes in a measure. And the same goes down here. So this means that this is held for the full length of the measure, 4 beats. This is held for 2 of the 4, and this is held for the 2 of the second half beats of this measure. And these are 1 beat per measure. And then you have 8 eighth notes. So the beat is divided into 8 parts, or the measure is divided into 8 parts. So you have, this would be counted 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So you count this as 1, 2, 3, 4, holding down that note. And then this would be 1, 2, 3, 4. And this would be 1, 2, 3, 4. And then 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. That's how we count the notes, the note duration, or the rhythm in music. So notes can be subdivided to even smaller notes. These are 16th notes, and you would count these 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. And there's even smaller 30-second notes. But we're not going to get too concerned with those for right now. For right now, we're just going to end with 16th notes. So rests are equally important in sheet music. A rest is the absence of a note, or the quiet spaces between notes. And those also have durations, and they're exactly the same as the notes themselves. So a whole note, or a whole rest, I should say, looks like this here, put in the measure. And that means for 4 beats, there's no notes. It's quiet. A rest. Here, the next biggest duration for a rest is a half rest. So you could fit 2 half rests in one measure. But you wouldn't put 2 half rests in the measure, because you would put a full rest in the measure. You would put a half rest in the measure if the first half of the measure was quiet, and then you had a note or notes that fit in the second half of the measure. The next biggest rest duration is a quarter. So you could fit 4 of these in one measure. Again, you would put a full rest in the measure. You wouldn't put 4. You could if you wanted to, but in order to make the music look better and cleaner, you would just put a full rest in there. So you could have a rest, a note, a rest, and a note. And then so on and so forth. The next rest duration is an eighth. So you could fit 8 of these in a measure, which you would not do. You would put a full rest in there. But this is just to show the spacing of the rests. They have the same duration as the notes. You could put an eighth note in one of those spaces, one of those rests. So this is the durations of the notes and the rests, and the combinations are endless, especially when we get to the next stage, which will be dotted notes and rests. So the last rest duration that I'm going to get into is 16th rests. So as the name implies, there would be 16 of these that could fill a measure. And likewise, you could fit a note. The note would be the same duration as the rest. So these are the note rests, and the notes and the rests are the same duration, the empty space between the notes. So we're going to go into dotted notes, and then we're going to get more advanced after that. So a dotted note, when you see the dot after the note, it means it's held for its duration plus half of its duration. So this is a quarter plus half of a quarter would be an eighth. So this would be held to 1 and 2. And then the rest would kick in on the and of 2, and then you would count 3 and 4 and to fill out the empty space. So you would be counting the eighth note in an eighth note increments, because this is subdivided to a quarter plus an eighth. Now, the more you sight read, the less you'll have to count every single eighth note of the beat. You'll automatically know that this is held for the 1 and the and which would be, this is not lined up that great, so this would be more like this. Right there. So this is on the 3 and 4 and that's on the and of 2. So 1 and 2 and. So the more you do this, the more you'll instantaneously know the length of the note. So the eighth note would be counted, the eighth plus half of its duration is 16th. So this would be counted 1 E and then the next note would be on the A or the 1 E and then this would be the quarter beat of the 2 beat, 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and so on and so forth. I kind of skipped around. I went from quarter to eighth. I'm going to do, easy one to know is dotted half notes, which is the length of the note plus half, which would be 3 beats for this one. As you can see, the computer automatically filled out the 4th beat is a rest, so it would be 1, 2, 3. A half note is 2 beats, plus half that duration is 1 beat, so that's 3 beats. So you would get 1, 2, 3. And that's how it would be spaced out. You would have one, you would count the 3 beats, and the rest would be on the 4th beat. So as you can see, notes can be mixed in matched in different durations and with rest combinations. So the combinations are practically endless. That's why music just keeps going forever, because there's so many combinations. And as you get into chords and chord progressions, there's a lot of combinations that can be done. So, but you'll see certain patterns over and over again with the notes, and you'll have to identify them quickly. So this is part 1 of sight reading. We covered the names of the notes, the note durations, and the note rest durations. So this is a good starting point in learning how to sight read. So the same thing goes for the rests. It's the duration plus half of its duration. So this would be a quarter rest plus half would be an eighth. So this would be held down for 1 and 2. And then this note would fall on the end of the 2 beat. And same goes for the 8th note rest. You would have the 8th note or the 8th rest plus half of that, which would be a 16th of a rest. So this would be held for the 1 E and this note would be on the A. And then this note would be on the 2 B. So 1 E and A, 2 E and A, 3 E and A, 4 E and so on. And the same goes for the half note rest or the half rest. It's held down for 3 beats because the half rest is 2 beats plus half that is 1 beat, so that equals 3. So this would be 1, 2, 3, and then this chord would be on the 4th beat. So that is the concept of the dotted rest. So we covered a lot of the elements that are needed to learn music notation or sight reading. We know what the staffs are, the clefs, the meter, the note names, and the note durations. We'll be covering more things in part 2, but there's a book that I highly recommend getting. It's called The Everything Reading Music Book by Mark Schoenbrunn. I've referred to this book many times when I needed to look up symbols and what they mean and how to use them. So it's a very good book. It's got a lot of information on not just notation, but I think it covers some music theory as well. So that is my tip for this week, and we'll see you next time.